What if love was never the goal? What if every relationship you enter, whether romantic, professional, or even spiritual, is not built on love, but on power? We like to think of intimacy as a sanctuary, a place where we are finally free from the competition, the masks, the manipulation. But Machiavelli would laugh at that illusion, because he knew something uncomfortable. Wherever there are human beings, there are power struggles. And nowhere are these struggles more subtle and more brutal than in the dynamics between men and women. You may think she's simply moody, testing your patience, provoking you for no reason. But what if those tests are not random? What if they are a timeless, unconscious mechanism designed to measure your strength, your stability, your authenticity? Machiavelli didn't just speak to kings and generals, he spoke to anyone who would ever hold power. And power is always tested. If you don't understand this, you will confuse love with approval, affection with obedience, attraction with submission. And that confusion will destroy you. So here's the brutal truth. Women don't want just love. They want to know if your power can withstand the storm. And to understand why, we need to return to the man who understood human desire, manipulation, and control better than anyone, Niccolo Machiavelli. Power that is never tested is power that slowly dies. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and it remains one of the most brutal truths about human nature. Think about it. A king who is never challenged by rivals begins to rot in his own illusions. A leader who is never questioned by his people grows weak, fragile, complacent. And a man who is never confronted in his relationships begins to confuse comfort with strength. In reality, what is not tested cannot be trusted. And here lies the uncomfortable paradox. Tests do not come when you are ready. They come when you least expect them. They come in the silence after you've spoken, in the way someone questions your certainty, in the moments when your mask slips and the raw version of you is exposed. This is not cruelty. This is life demanding proof. Machiavelli saw power as something alive, like fire. Left alone, it burns out. Fed, it grows. But what feeds power is not obedience, not harmony, not endless reassurance. What feeds it is confrontation. Every time your authority, your stability, your identity is challenged, you are given a chance to either collapse or to prove that your center holds. Now look at this not in politics, but in the private battlefield of intimacy. Why does she test you? Why does she provoke, contradict, or push the limits of your patience? It is not because she wants to see you fall apart. It is because something inside her is searching for proof. Proof that you are not pretending. Proof that your confidence is not paper thin. Proof that you can remain grounded, even when the ground beneath you shifts. This test is not feminine manipulation. It is human instinct. The same way an animal pushes against the bars of its cage to see if they will hold, people push against each other's boundaries to know whether what they are standing on is real. And in relationships, the tests are constant. The missed call, the sharp remark, the sudden coldness. Each one asks the same silent question: are you real or are you fragile? Most men mistake these tests as attacks. They respond with anger, or retreat into silence, or beg for reassurance. And in doing so, they fail the test, not because they are cruelly judged, but because they reveal the very weakness the test was meant to uncover. The truth is, she is not trying to destroy you. She is trying to feel whether you can survive the storm with your spine intact. Machiavelli's dark secret is that power is never stable. It is always on trial. And the moment you stop being tested, It is not a sign of love, it is a sign of indifference. The test is proof that your presence matters. The question is, can you carry its weight without collapsing?
Machiavelli never limited his insight to kings and generals. His writings were about the very fabric of human behavior, about the instincts that drive us when no one is watching. He understood that power is not simply imposed from the top down. It is constantly negotiated, tested, and proven in every human interaction. And this is where the game begins. When a woman tests a man, it is not about cruelty or manipulation. It is the same principle Machiavelli described in politics. Subjects constantly test their ruler because they want to know if he is strong enough to hold his position. In relationships, the same law applies. The test is the unconscious way of asking, do you actually embody the strength you claim to have, or are you merely pretending? For Machiavelli, appearances mattered, but not in the shallow sense of performance. They mattered because appearances reveal substance under pressure. A ruler who collapses at the first sign of rebellion cannot be trusted. In the same way, a man who collapses at the first sign of resistance cannot inspire respect or attraction. The test exposes the truth. What survives confrontation is real. What crumbles was always fragile. Notice how this logic changes the way we interpret conflict. A challenge is not always a rejection. Often it is an invitation. When she contradicts you, when she provokes you, when she withdraws affection, she is not simply punishing you. She is searching for proof. And proof cannot be given by words. It has to be shown in the way you remain steady, the way you hold your frame, the way you refuse to be pulled out of yourself by her storm. Machiavelli warned that rulers who depend on constant approval are destined to lose power. The same is true in intimacy. If your strength relies on her validation, then you have no strength at all, because the moment she withholds it, you collapse. The test reveals whether your stability is rooted in her reaction or in your own unshakable ground. And here lies the psychology of the game, according to Machiavelli. Love and power are never separate. What we call love often hides a silent contract of power. Every gesture of affection, every conflict, every silence is asking the same question. Can you withstand the pressure without begging, breaking, or pretending? The game is cruel because it never ends, but it is also honest because it ensures that what survives is real. And in this honesty, Machiavelli leaves us with the most brutal truth of all. If you are not being tested, you are not being trusted. Most men fail the test, not because they are weak, but because they don't even recognize that a test is happening. They take the words literally, the moment personally, and the situation as an attack. They fight ghosts without realizing they are inside a theater where every movement is symbolic. Imagine this. She criticizes something small, something trivial. Perhaps she mocks the way you reacted to a problem, or she challenges your decision in front of others. The unprepared man explodes. He defends himself with fury, raising his voice, demanding obedience. In that moment, he believes he is showing strength. But what he reveals is the opposite, fragility disguised as power. Because true power never needs to shout. Others respond with silence, but not the strong kind. They retreat, shrink, collapse inward. They withdraw to avoid conflict, but their absence is not felt as peace, it is felt as emptiness. She doesn't see composure in their silence, she sees fear. And fear is not the ground on which trust can be built. And here is the irony. The very thing he is trying to protect, peace, is exactly what collapses. Because peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of strength. When the man avoids the storm does not disappear. It only grows larger in the silence, waiting for the moment when his weakness will be undeniable. Then there are those who beg.
They overcompensate, pleading for reassurance, desperately trying to prove they are good enough, lovable enough, safe enough. But the very act of begging kills desire, because it confesses the one thing no test should ever reveal: dependence. These are the three common failures of men under pressure: aggression, avoidance, and dependence. All of them are rooted in the same blindness: the belief that love can exist without power, that intimacy can survive without authority over oneself. Machiavelli would call this the collapse of the prince. When a ruler is unable to maintain his dignity in the face of challenge, he is no longer a ruler. He is a subject. And the same is true in relationships. When a man cannot remain grounded in the face of testing, he loses not only respect, but also the invisible aura that sustains attraction. The tragedy is that these men often believe they are fighting for love, when in reality they are surrendering it. They confuse control with confidence, submission with harmony, and reassurance with intimacy. And in doing so, they fall into the very trap the test was designed to expose. They prove they are not strong enough to be trusted. But here lies the cruel paradox. The test is never meant to be passed through performance. It is not about acting unbothered, or pretending to be stoic, or imitating strength. Women and the unconscious itself see through masks. The test is not about what you do in the moment. It is about who you are when pressure strips your performance away. The man who doesn't understand the test keeps trying to manipulate appearances. He tries to win arguments, to silence criticism, to demand validation. And every attempt only deepens the wound. Because real power is not confirmed by the absence of conflict. It is confirmed by the ability to remain whole inside it. So when you fail to understand the test, you don't just lose an argument, you lose something far more dangerous: the invisible respect that holds relationships together. And once that respect is gone, love becomes pity, attraction turns into resentment, and intimacy dissolves into obligation. This is why so many relationships die, not with betrayal, but with exhaustion. She is not leaving because of the test itself, but because of the endless confirmation that the man she trusted cannot carry the weight of her doubt. The tragedy is not the test. The tragedy is the answer he keeps giving to it.
Machiavelli's brilliance was not in teaching men how to dominate, but in showing them how fragile power truly is. He knew that the more desperately someone clings to control, the less control they actually have. The louder a man insists on being respected, the clearer it becomes that his authority is hollow. True power has a paradox. The less it is displayed, the more it is felt. The strongest leaders rarely need to announce their strength. The most magnetic men are not those who demand loyalty, but those who embody a presence that makes loyalty natural. Machiavelli understood that fear and love are not opposites, but mirrors, and that the ruler who grasps at one while ignoring the other is already doomed. And here is where relationships reflect politics. A man who tries to perform strength, to act unbothered, to force authority, fails in the same way as a tyrant who shouts decrees from a collapsing throne. The performance of confidence is not confidence. The mask of authority does not survive the test of intimacy. She does not want a man who plays power, she wants a man who is power. And this is the paradox most men never solve. The test cannot be passed by resisting it, nor by escaping it. It can only be passed by dissolving the need for approval itself. When your center is unshakable, you stop performing for her reaction, and it is precisely then that her reaction changes. She no longer tests to find out who you are, she sees who you are. Machiavelli would call this the essence of ruling without tyranny. The ruler who does not need to threaten is the one who inspires true allegiance. In the same way, the man who does not need to dominate becomes the one who holds real attraction. Because what women, and all humans, ultimately crave is not dominance, but certainty. And certainty cannot be faked, it cannot be begged for, it cannot be performed. It emerges only when a man has faced his own chaos and survived it. That is why the test is never about her, it is about you. The paradox is that the harder you try to win the game, the more clearly you reveal that you are playing it. And nothing kills desire faster than seeing that someone's identity is built on strategy instead of substance. The only way to pass the Machiavellian test is to stop needing to pass it. Presence replaces performance. Essence replaces appearance. And here's the final cruelty of the paradox. If you spend your life chasing proof of your strength, you will never find it. Every test will feel like an accusation, every challenge like a betrayal. But the man who has confronted his own darkness does not fear being tested. He almost welcomes it, because he knows that each confrontation is not a threat to his power, but the stage where his authenticity can be revealed. So when Machiavelli says it is better to be feared than loved, he is not speaking about cruelty. He is speaking about weight, the gravity of a man whose presence commands attention without demanding it. That is the paradox. The moment you no longer need to prove your power, the world finally begins to feel it.
Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised clarity. And his clarity is ruthless. Power is fragile, and the moment you stop proving it, it begins to fade. Here lies the paradox. On one hand, power must constantly be tested, because what is not tested cannot be trusted. On the other hand, the very act of needing to prove power exposes its weakness. If you are shaken every time you are questioned, then your strength is not real. It is borrowed, conditional, dependent. Machiavelli knew this double edge well. A ruler who spends all his energy crushing every doubt becomes a tyrant, and a tyrant always rules in fear of being overthrown. But a ruler who ignores doubt entirely is naive, and naivety is the fastest road to collapse. The art of power lies in the space between, standing firm without desperation, holding presence without begging, inspiring respect without demanding it. This is the same in love. If you collapse under every test, you prove your weakness. But if you rage, control, or beg for constant reassurance, you prove something worse, that your identity is built on performance, not substance. The paradox is that the harder you try to prove your worth, the clearer it becomes that you are insecure. And here is the brutal truth that Machiavelli forces us to see. The only way to truly pass the test is to stop needing to pass it. A ruler who no longer fears losing his crown is the one who rules most securely. A man who no longer fears being tested is the one who inspires the deepest trust, because the test is no longer a threat. It becomes the stage where authenticity is revealed. Think about it. When you no longer depend on approval, her test loses its grip on you. When you no longer perform, her judgment no longer destabilizes you. You are not untouched because you are cold. You are untouched because your ground is deeper than her storm. This is the paradox. The moment you no longer need to prove your power, the world finally begins to feel it. And this is why Machiavelli remains as unsettling today as he was in Renaissance Italy. He strips away our illusions. He tells us that love without power is weakness, and power without stability is tyranny. And he leaves us with a choice: collapse under the weight of the test, or become the kind of presence that no test can break. So when you hear the words, "she's testing you," do not take them as an insult. Take them as proof. Proof that you are in the arena.
proof that your presence matters, proof that the question of your strength is still alive. Because in Machiavelli's world, and in ours, power is not given once and for all. It is demanded, measured, and confirmed every single day.
If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. Because in the end, every test is asking the same question. Are you pretending or are you real? Most men fail because they think it's about winning her. It's not. It's about holding yourself when the ground shifts. Machiavelli's secret was never that women destroy men. It's that weakness destroys itself. And if you felt that truth tearing at you tonight, it's because the test has already begun.